All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday night Global Reach Team Leaders Call. I'm real excited about tonight. We have a great call for you. You know, these calls have been going on for the last couple of weeks, and we have them all recorded on my lengold.co/getstarted, WG Get Started. And if anybody needs that, just message me or go to the GRT page, and you can get these recordings. We're going to also put them on our YouTube page because we feel like just going through these 10 steps, you know, as we progress, we're going through Bryan's 10 steps. And, you know, before I get into that, just real quick about me, Chris Lengel. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I currently am in California doing travel nursing. I build this business part-time along with many of you, and my goal is to move to full-time. And just real excited about what Wealth Generators has to offer. This company has just been getting better and better. And, you know, as we're talking right now, we're in trades in the Forex market and learning financial fitness, and it's just so much fun. And you know, backtracking on my story, I've been doing this for the last, I saw this industry 7 years ago. And I used to get on these calls, and I used to, think, man, wouldn't it be great? Like, I'd listen to all this great information. Wouldn't it be great to do this? And now letting everyone on this call know that you can do this. It just takes plugging in, just like you're doing now, learning step by step, giving it time to grow, and, you know, now being a part of this and being able to host these calls with my mentor, Bryan Robert, who is somebody who's been a huge influence on me, somebody who's taught me a ton, and he really is the reason I'm here because he made this more than just a business for me. And I hope that these calls, you get that out of this, that we're all here to work this together and be one big team together and to really grow and build something great. And whatever our goals are, we get to go do them together. And I think that, you know, that you don't have to look far, that there's a lot of negativity out there in the social environments and the political environments and everything out there. It's like, what a great thing to plug into for a half hour on a Tuesday night and get some positivity is what I believe. So what I want to do is, Bryan, do I have you on the call? So what I'm going to do here is today we're going to talk about goals, and whenever I get Bryan here,
sorry, I was muted. I'm here.
I knew it, just like the other week. So Bryan, go ahead and introduce yourself. I told you, I remember that from last week. I just saw your text, but so go ahead and introduce yourself, Bryan, and just talk a little bit about maybe what's going on this week with Wealth Gen, or what you're excited about, and just briefly your story, and we'll jump into getting started because I know we get real excited here. These half hours go quick.
Yeah, no, I'll just jump right into it. Bryan Robert, I've been in this industry now for 24 years. Can't believe it's been that long, but it actually has. And I've been full-time for about 22 of those years. I was very fortunate early on to get involved and not make any money, not have any success for a few years, really get beat up, have a lot of people tell me no, pretty much everybody. But, you know, I had that side of the industry, but then I found a mentor, got into a better company. This business from a professional to be a professional, and went on to become a seven-figure earner in my early 20s, and do over $1 billion now in sales in about 25 countries, and had over 1 million people in my organizations all totaled up. Consult for the industry. I love the industry. I definitely understand and empathize with people that have had some negative experiences in the industry. I kind of sometimes joke that it's a love-hate relationship, but at the end of the day, I really do believe that this is a business that everybody should be involved with, at least on a part-time basis, from the tax benefits to, you know, the ability to, you know, get a second paycheck without having to have a second job, have flexible hours, and, you know, really give people kind of hope again, especially internationally. What I loved about WG was found a company that I felt like even my mom could do. You know, even you know, those people that say, well, I can't get anybody to join, they still could have success because of the product. Really was intrigued with the concept, and since then I've just built a great relationship with the owners of the business. See how ethical they are, how honest they are, and, you know, believe that we're doing something new and different in the industry. So real excited.
That's awesome. So we had a really great call last week, and we talked about long-term goals, you know, 3 to 5 years, medium goals, 6 months, and then short-term, you know, what's the next PIN level you want to achieve, where do you want to go, and understanding what the PIN level is what we're talking about as a rank, and really what rank turns into is what amount of money do you want to make. And what we talked about last week was taking these big goals, and we talked about dreaming and having these big goals. Bryan, I love a lot of the stories you shared, and even where you've been able to come from at such a young age and now and making all that money and where you and the big dreams you still have and all that. So this week is going to be the goal of how do we take that down to a weekly goal, and how do we learn how to do the business daily in small, consistent steps. And that's really the premise of this call. And we've closed out last week, and it was a story that I was going to share, and I wanted to share this week because we got through and that half hour ran by, but we had gotten into a little bit of this on the small steps and taking that big goal and breaking it down. And in my last company, I used to look at the rank of what you consider 25K rank here at Wealth Generators, which, like you've told me, is that's really one of those key ranks. I mean, you're making a full-time income, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month you can be making at this rank. And it's a very significant spot. And I used to look at that rank in my last company and be like, how am I ever going to get there? Because it seems so high. The mountain seems so far away. And it really was whenever I started to say, okay, how do I get there? I broke it down and started to just bury my head in what are the actions I can do right now to achieve that. And I want you to kind of talk about that, Bryan, those daily steps, that weekly goals that you can make now to achieve. And kind of now that we have a target, how do we get there?
So, we did touch on this a little bit last week, but this is really the kind of the heart of building. I think, there's a lot of times, people put those big goals out there, but they become almost dreams and there's no action behind it. If you did one thing well in this business, well, I guess probably inviting is pretty important, but the other thing that I would say to do well is to set short-term weekly goals. You say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And what does that mean? It means that sometimes you look at these goals and maybe you put for your long-term goal that, you want to be making, $20,000 a month. Or you might say, well, I want to go to the top rank in the company. And you start doing the math on it. It's like, oh my gosh, that's thousands of people in my business. And right now I've got me and, my sister, and that's it. So all of a sudden it's like this elephant, and it's like, well, there's no way I can eat this elephant. It's too big, and you start psyching yourself out, and you're working hard, and you triple your business in the month, so now you have 6 people instead of 2, and you double it the next month, and you got 12, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to take me 10 years to get to my goal. You psych yourself out, and you never really get there. And the getting to where you want to be is kind of like the elephant. And how do you do it? One bite at a time. So you don't focus on that big goal. You focus on what you can control. You focus on these little bites, these short-term weekly goals, short-term weekly actions, because we can control our actions and we can control what we do. The other thing is that you want people winning every single week. So I want someone this week focusing on what they can control and feeling like, wow, I won, I accomplished it. So if I set actions this week to sign 5 people up, let's just say I talked to 20 people and no one signs up. Well, I might say, oh man, it didn't work for me. I failed. But if I set a goal to talk to 20 people this week and I talked to 20, well, all of a sudden I won. Let's just say I set a goal to talk to 20 and nobody signed up. I still hit my goal. Let's say I set a goal to sign 5 people up and I signed up 3, and I'm like, oh man, so now I feel like I failed. And the other way, I didn't sign anyone up and I feel like I won. You see what I'm saying? So what you want to do is you want to start looking at what's in your control, and it's the actions that are going to get you to the result. So what are the golden rules? It's the correct actions done on a consistent basis for a long enough period of time eventually equals your goal. And so first you have to know what those correct actions are, which is some of the stuff that we've been teaching on these calls. And then you have to get consistent. And that's the other thing. A lot of times if you don't break this thing up into weeks, then what will happen is you'll get towards the end of the month and you just want to try to cram everything in, or like, I haven't really done anything, or you kind of start getting to where it's like, oh, let me put my network marketing hat on and try to go out and do something. What it'll do is you'll start getting in the habit of doing this business naturally, doing it every single day, doing it as you're going out there, as you're talking to people, as you're at work, as you're, in your community and with family. And it just becomes a natural thing because you're just used to doing the actions. It'll become second nature, and eventually you're eating that elephant one bite at a time, 1 week at a time. And before you know it, all of a sudden it's like you look up and it's like, wow, I've ate half that elephant. I'm halfway to where I want to be, or a lot further than you thought. The other thing, Chris, is that I've always said people fail in this business because they don't understand geometric progression. I've said that before. What happens is they always feel like, gosh, I should be further along than I am based on the work that I've done, because they're thinking that, well, if it's going to take me 2 years to get there, by 1 year I should be halfway there. Well, it doesn't work like that. It might take 18 months, and you're 10% of the way, and you go the other 90% of the way the next 4 months. The business builds geometrically, doesn't build 1 + 1 + 1. And that's one of the things why, if you're focusing on where you are, or most likely where you're not, instead of focusing on just doing those actions every day, then you're going to be sorely disappointed because you're not where you want to be. And a lot of times people will quit before that geometric progression kicks in and gets them that last 90%, even in 10% of the time. It's so interesting the way you talk about geometric progression, because the first time you talked about it with me, it didn't quite make sense. I was like, okay, Bryan, it sounds good, but it's like trying to understand compounding interest on investing. It's the same thing. And it's so interesting you say that, and that goes back to my story of trying to hit the rank that was similar to 25K. I had been grinding and grinding and grinding, and I remember going to you and being like, Bryan, what can I do? I was still at the $500 rank here, similar rank, $500, and I want to get that 25K, and I'm grinding, and you just kept saying, just keep going, just keep staying consistent, you're doing the right things. And what was I doing? Daily actions. I was reading my why, I was showing up to these calls, I was showing up to the meeting, I was showing up on the webinars, and I was presenting the opportunity consistently. And it was like you said, Bryan, all of a sudden, like if I would have quit in 1 month before it, I would have quit as, this doesn't work at a $500 rank. 2 months later, I hit that 25K level rank. Because, like you said, the geometric progression, all of a sudden, a person brought in a big networker. And then another one signed up his brother, who brought in 80 people in 3 weeks. And it was like, pow, and all of a sudden it went boom, boom, and my business took off. And it was all because of the same thing. And I didn't understand it until I saw it, and it was like mind-blowing. And, I guess, you can, once you do see it, it is one of those things, but just it's totally true, exactly what you're talking about. Absolutely. A lot of times what happens is, you get involved in, we have all these expectations. It's like, I think the industry has unfortunately been done a disservice when sometimes people get involved in just make tons of money right away, right? So you hear about these stories, the one they're putting a person on stage and he's like, well, shoot, I don't even know much, and I just got in, I talked to 2 people, and now I'm making $10,000 a minute, and I've only been in this thing for a week. And you're just like, oh my gosh, and everybody's like, yeah, you see, look, you can do that too. And they sell these stories of, and you know what, the terrible thing is those things do happen. I've seen it. I've seen people get involved, get really lucky, and go to the top. But they're not the norm, they're the exception. But over the years in network marketing, a lot of times people, they bring these stories out, and, they put this kind of false sense of idea of what this business is, or sometimes we compare ourselves to other people. So we see someone who's hitting rank and who's doing these things, and, we think, well, gosh, how are they doing that, as compared to what I'm doing? I'm working so much harder, or this or that. And that's another thing, comparing yourself to other people. But the reality of it, Chris, is, it is about taking those steps, each and every week. And I think maybe we should go through, kind of some of what these steps are, because it's those steps eventually that go. And then sometimes when that geometric progression does hit, when it does go, it is like, oh my gosh. And that's the other thing. Sometimes you'll see someone whose business just explodes, and they go from this rank all the way to this rank. And you're just getting started, and you're going, it's not working for you that fast, but you're not realizing they put in a year or 2 or 3 years before all of a sudden it took off and it exploded. And that's the only thing as a professional network marketer we don't know. So as a professional network marketer, I know that if I do the correct actions and I do them on a consistent basis and I do it for a long enough period of time, I'll eventually get to wherever I want to go to. But long enough, that's kind of the thing that's the unknown. Long enough is whenever it happens. And that's why one of the things you need to do is you have to make a decision. Are you in or are you out? Are you going to do this business to succeed, or are you going to do this business for a set amount of time? If you're telling yourself, well, I'm going to do this for 6 months, and if I don't reach where I want to reach, what I would say is I hope you like the product, because most likely you won't get there. You have to have a conscious decision that I'm going to do this until, and that's it, until I get there. And that's the great secret, is that you eventually will get there. At some point, it's a formula that works every time, just like the mathematical formula works every time. Correct actions done on a consistent basis for a long enough period of time will eventually get you there. For some people, that might be 18 months. For some people, it might be 7 or 8 years. You don't know how long it's going to be, but the more correct actions you can take, the more consistent you can be, and the more dedicated you are, then the faster you'll get there. And sometimes it just happens in different people. But, looking at some of the correct actions, and, I don't know if, Chris, you want to jump in and go through some of these, but, I immediately think of showing up. Just that alone right there. You can control showing up. So find out, what is there to show up to? We've got our things that we have going on. They might have local meetings in your area. They have the company has different webinars and training calls and things like that. There are a lot of different things that you have access to show up to. Just showing up is something you can control. You can put a pair of headphones on. You can be at the gym. You can be at work. And you can be wherever you want to be. And you can show up to a lot of things. That keeps your battery charged. That gives you information. That keeps you engaged. It keeps your mind focused and thinking about the business. I always talk about, I remember my first company, we used to say we had insomnia. And I remember thinking, like, I'm dreaming about this. And so I told people, look, if you're not at a point where you're dreaming about this, then you're probably not doing it right, because this is your ticket to your why. This is your ticket to your goals and everything else. So figuring out those things and just showing up, is something. Contacting. We have a very simple way to contact people where we can lead with the product, where you can, send a text message with a little video attached to it that says, hey, have you ever been involved in trading or been interested in anything like that? If I sent you this little video, it's, 3 minutes. Would you check it out and tell me what you think? Most people are going to say, well, yeah. You can set actions to say, you know what, I'm going to make sure I share this video with 5 people this week. Just doing that. And then imagine when you get 1 or 2 people in your business and they're all sharing it 5 times a week. It doesn't matter who. We're not saying, we're going to sign up 5 people a week. It doesn't matter how many you sign up. Eventually people will join, and you just continue on like that. And you have 5 or 10 or 20 or 100. All of a sudden that video is being shared quite often. The product is being shared quite often. Your business will start to grow, absolutely positively. And you can control that, and you can do that. If you share it 5 times a week, we're talking, it doesn't take any time to send out the video. Talking to the person and following up is, 10 minutes or something like that. And we're talking, an hour a week of your time to work the business. A lot of times, Chris, I talk to people and they're like, man, I'm just, working the business so hard and, this and this. And it's like, okay, well, what did you do? And, they start really looking at it, and it's like, well, I haven't really done much of anything. The other thing about this, Chris, is keeping yourself accountable. If you're going to be honest with anybody, make sure at least you're honest with yourself. Another thing I really highly recommend, Chris, is an action sheet. Why don't you talk about that, how you can look at this action sheet that you do and has the different actions, and then you can kind of fill out and say, wow, you know what, I haven't done anything this week. A lot of times we invent things in our mind that we're actually doing and working the business. But maybe talk about that, Chris, like action sheet and keeping themselves accountable.
I love that you say that, because I was actually going through my mind as you were talking about those daily actions. And it's awesome, too, to hear this, because if all of you on this call, if you've been on our other calls, it's so cool to see if you're listening along with me that how much all these 10 steps really correlate together. As Bryan put them, as Bryan has them there, it's like, we're talking about goals. We're also talking about how those inviting comes back into goals and all these other topics we've talked about, and we're going to go forward. So it's so much fun to see how it all correlates. But absolutely. And I was kind of thinking in my head, like, no, Bryan, there has to be something else you do. Come on, tell us the secret. Like, there's got to be something here that you do daily. But there really isn't. It's that daily action. And one of the things that I did to help myself, because I get real flighty. I don't know if any of you guys on the call can agree, but I get distracted. There's a lot going on. I've got a busy life. So one of the best things I did was I created a action sheet. So you can make it a checklist, a daily checklist, like read my why, check. It takes about 2 minutes. 2 invites a day, check. I mean, like Bryan talked about that compounding geometric progression. If you did 2 invites a day, 5 days a week, that's 10 a week. Show the plan 10 times a month, that's 40 times you've shown the plan. I mean, you'll be a rock star in 3 months, 6 months. Weekly meeting. Did I go to the weekly meeting? Did I get on the weekly call? Checklist. And then I actually have a tracker sheet. I'm actually in the process of doing another 90-day push, and I want to start one of these in January. But just a checklist of invites made, opportunity exposures, meetings and 3-way calls, follow-ups, new distributor training. Just the simple action steps. And it really is, ladies and gentlemen, it is the keeping track of those simple actions. As much as I wanted when I first started the secret sauce, it is just doing those consistent enough. And like Bryan said, it takes a couple hours a week, an hour, 2 hours a day to go through each one of these things, and you can move forward. And it really is. And I love that we're going to talk about next week personal development, because a lot of what this is all going to tie into that. But some of the great books like The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, he talks about it's not one thing, one massive thing you do, that it's the small, simple steps every day that makes you successful. And that's what gets me excited about weekly goals. And, like Bryan was talking about, I'll just go through again real quick. If you guys have your pen and paper, reading your why, showing up on the Tuesday call. Bryan said showing up to Wednesday meetings, showing up on the webinar, and then, as Bryan said earlier on, inviting. If you can get good at inviting, if you can expose people to the business, share the video, share the webinar with them, those simple things daily. And like you said, it'll be on your mind where, people ask me, well, Chris, how do you talk to somebody that you don't know when you're out and about? Well, it gets a little easier when you're sharing the business so much. When you meet somebody that's really dynamic, maybe it's a server that you're talking to, maybe you're out and somebody has a cool car or a nice suit on and you start up a conversation. It's a little easier whenever it's on your mind, when you're constantly in action, to say, hey, do you trade in Forex market? Do you know anything about Forex? They might be like, yeah, a little bit, but I never really got into it. It's pretty complicated. Well, hey, I got this great program I'm working with. I'd love to share it with you. You seem like a successful guy. I think it'd be great for you. Oh yeah, great. Let me get your phone number. So it just kind of becomes a very easy thing in that regard. Bryan, we talked about that with inviting, but for weekly goals, Bryan, talk just kind of some of your daily things, because you do also. I mean, you have so much going on with corporate stuff, with things. What are some things on your mind that, you're coming into a business and you're going to go crush it? Let's talk about somebody that wants to go out there and knock it out of the park. What is some weekly action goals? Because we're talking about on the very basic level, like these are very simple things. Take it to another level. Let's say somebody like myself or somebody on this call says, I want to go out there and I want to take over the world. I want to be the number one guy in WG. What's some weekly goals that they could set to get to that big goal to make that happen here, as we, got about, a few minutes left?
Sure. Well, something that I kind of think of is 20 and 20. And 20-20 is this. You bring in 20 people and help them get 20. Now, how fast can you do that? The reason why you want to do that is because you want to get to the geometric progression as fast as possible. In order for you to get there, you have to have some people in your team. It's easy to call up, 20 people and say, hey, look, I'm just getting started in this business. I'm really excited about it. I think it'd be a perfect fit for you. Here's some information. And they check it out and say, look, I want you to be one of my key people. Run with me. We're going to go out and we're going to build this thing. Something to that effect. You have 20 people do that, and each person you bring in, you say, now, look, I want you to get 20 of your top people that really want to make a change, that like this product, that want to run with it. Well, you've just brought in 400 people into your business. So a few things have happened right there. One, you're close to a 6-figure income. And some people do this in a month, theoretically. Maybe it's going to take you several months. probably you're not going to get 20 who get 20, right? So it's not going to work out perfectly, but you start to get the general idea. You want to skip past that slow period, and you want to start creating massive action as quick as possible. And the best time to do it is now. The best time to do it is just to go out and do it. And what you're going to find is 20 people is it's a lot easier than you think, because people are looking. And especially what we have over here at WG, to me, it's easier than anything I've ever been a part of, because it's so intriguing for people. It's so different. It's not what they've seen. You're not calling them up to sling some kind of thing that they're not really interested in. And so doing massive action, Chris, focusing on the actions of, sharing the product, sharing the opportunity, and following up, and being very consistent and very diligent with doing that. And also putting a sense of urgency both in yourself and with other people. Now, I have a sense of urgency. I sometimes am panicked that, I'm not further along in the business, and I might sound crazy, but I know how these things work. You have timing is one of these things that is very important in our business. It doesn't mean everything, because people say, people that get in early make all the money. Well, no, the majority of people who get in early make nothing because they quit, because they never do anything. But if you take advantage of it and you get in early, then yes, that's a huge benefit, but you have to take advantage of it. So the fact that we're in the time that we're in right now is a gift. And for whatever reason, you're in it. And the majority of people that hear about our business won't hear about it for 10 years from now, because the world is a really big place. But for whatever reason, you heard about it, you're involved with it. And when this company becomes big, you'll see people that are in it a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 3 years from now, or 4 or 5 or 6 years from now. And when you tell them, I was in it 6 years ago, hopefully you took advantage of it, because I know what they're thinking is, man, I wish I was in this thing 6 years ago. So build with a sense of urgency. Take advantage of the fact that you're involved in the business before it's $1 billion company or something like that. And the last company that we got involved with, we didn't even get involved with it till it was doing almost $100 million a month, in sales. Why? Because that's when most people hear about these companies, whenever they're giants and they're everywhere. So building with a sense of urgency, conveying that urgency to other people, and making those short-term sacrifices in the beginning to get where you want to be. I think, to me, that's what takes it to the next level. Practicing sharing, practicing answering questions, educating yourself as quickly as possible. And I think just really treating this like what it is, a business, a real business that has the potential, if you're willing, to change your life. And I don't say that lightly. It really is something that can do that. I've seen it do it already for other people, and it's going to do it for a lot more. So I think that's it.
That's great. So I love that. And what's so crazy about it is if you want to go faster, it's really just doing those action steps faster, like you talked about. And I'm going out to Eric Worre's big event next week. I went last year, and really the theme last year of these $1 million earners, every $1 million earner from all these different companies, just like Bryan, massive in the industry. And the same theme was consistent. It's the more people that you get to look at wealth generators, to take an honest, open-minded look, that's where the money is. Now, there's all those other things we talked about, but that really is it. It's the faster you can do that, the more you can do, the more people that you can get in front of. That's the secret. And then what do you do after that? You plug them in. You plug them in, like Bryan said, and you teach them. And that's the best part, is you get to help people along the way, and that's my favorite part too. So we're, just about done. If you've been with us since the beginning of these calls, you've gotten to hear about the why, the names list, long-term goals, short-term goals. We also went through how to invite, how to make calls. We've laid out a plan where you can be making money tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. It just depends on what you do. So really exciting, these calls. I mean, this education and everything, this is the basics of network marketing. And I've talked to people that have been in this industry for years that are like, I was in this for years, and I was blown away when I finally got a hold of Bryan's 10 steps, because nobody ever taught me this. So I'm real excited for everybody that's on these calls. Next week, Bryan, we're going to do personal development, which I know is a huge thing for you, and it's actually one of the first things you told me that, changed my life, because at first, and I've had other people tell me I don't need that positive crap, blah, 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 but it's it's one of the most powerful things, and we'll hit on that next week. And I think it's going to be really fun after coming out of Thanksgiving. But is there anything else you want to say to close up here this week? And then I'll unmute the lines, and we'll close it up.
Nope, that's it. Excited for everything that's going on. Best is yet to come. We're really just getting started, and, just don't squander the opportunity. We've got a great opportunity, here to be involved with this company early on, and I hope you take advantage of it.
Awesome. So everyone, go out there and make your weekly goals. Start that consistent action, and we'll see you next Tuesday here on this call. Everyone, have a great week.